to Kath and to Millie for inviting me along this evening. And what I am going to talk about is about marketing, because that's what I understand that you're all into. And I'm going to talk about a sort of what I call values marketing. Probably not as you've previously understood values marketing, because I often think of that as meaning the idea that people have different values to which you appeal to, and it's often used to break people into sectors and so on. So this is not that kind of approach, but it is a different kind of values marketing. Infinite game, Kath?
We did it at the conference.
Okay, so you have the general idea of it. So what I want to do is just give you a very quick idea of what the infinite game is, and then do a quick interactive exercise, and then sort of build from there. So I'm only going to talk for about 15 minutes or so, but including the interactive exercise. So basically, the infinite game is an idea that was put forward by the philosopher James Cass, and he suggested that in life there are at least two kinds of games. The infinite game, in which the key object is to keep the game in play, and finite games in which the key object is to win. So the infinite game invites all players in. In finite games, you have to be qualified to enter the particular game that is potentially in play. Infinite players look towards horizons that move as a player moves. Finite games are played within boundaries, always of time. They will end at a time when somebody wins, and usually in a physical space boundary as well. In finite games, the rules must not change for the duration of the game. In the infinite game, the rules must change in order to keep the game in play. A master infinite player, if they sense that someone is about to lose, changes the rules in order to keep them participating in the game. We could extend that even to the biosphere. If we sense, say, a species is to become extinct, as an infinite player, what we would do is change the rules in order to try and ensure that doesn't happen. A master finite player has no such aim, because the aim of the master finite player is to win the current game according to the current rules. So one of the things, different characteristics or outcomes of these games, is that finite games tend to be inherently conservative. In fact, the master finite player, if you think about it, who wants to win, wants to know the outcome of the game before it begins. So for the master finite player, that game is in a sense ideally already in the past. A master infinite player never knows what will come, because for the master infinite player it is a matter of inviting all others in, keeping the game in play, adapting as necessary according to an unknown future which is created by all of us interacting and creating a game together. Now, another reason why master finite players or finite games tend to be conservative is because those players want to keep playing the same game. If you're winning at something, then let's have another game of that particular thing, another opportunity for me to win. So you can see that there's a problem in these games if we become aware of new information, if we realise that the rules need to change to keep it all in play. Now, just to sort of really quickly elaborate on these games from another perspective, let's imagine a game of beach cricket versus a game of test cricket. Okay, with beach cricket being an infinite game, kind of, and test cricket being a finite game. So in beach cricket, somebody picks up a piece of driftwood, somebody has a tennis ball, and you're desperate for players, so anyone on the beach is welcome to play. You set up rules, but nobody can really remember them. You might draw lines in the sand that are kind of boundaries, but they soon get scrubbed out. The master player of that game is not the person that can run the fastest or get the most runs or, throw people out. The master player of beach cricket is the one that has that particular knack of involving people and making them feel welcome and wanting to play. If you think about the rules, which nobody can remember anyway, they change continuously to ensure people can play. So if a young child just can't hit the ball, you say, oh, just run anyway, right? In test cricket, that would be completely ridiculous. The rules must not change for the duration of the game, or we don't know who won. It's not that everybody in the field gets to play at all. It's that people are selected for those teams, and they have to have certain qualifications. A master player of Test cricket, of course, is entirely focused on winning the game, not on any sort of social skills or whatever else you want to call it. Master players of Test cricket learn their skills by studying how people played cricket in the past. So again, there's that conservative nature of games of cricket in which they're pretty much always the same as the last game, more or less. Somebody different wins or whatever. Another feature of finite games and sport is a really good example of this, is that the difference between winning and losing is actually infinite, if you think about it. You know how people win the World Cup in soccer, which I was vaguely aware of because I was in Europe at the time, and the winner goes down in history as the winner. It doesn't matter how small the margin was. I think it was won on penalty kicks. They're now the winner. The loser is the loser. That difference is infinite because that's what we create in finite games. Whereas in the infinite game, who wins beach cricket, who loses, it's just the concept isn't there, right? So do you get the idea of the two kinds of games? Okay, so one other element to these games is that infinite games are played with infinite values in mind. So obviously they're about participation, obviously they're about keeping the game in play, but we can think about other things that they're played with. So this is where your first exercise comes in. I want you each to think of 3 things that you think are of infinite value. Now, I'm going to give you a definition, and I can repeat it because I haven't got it written down in front of you. Something is of infinite value. You might think of it as precious, special, maybe sacred, if that language is comfortable to you. It's a value for its own sake, not because it's something it leads to, but just of its own sake. Infinite values make the world truly alive. If we were to lose something of infinite value, we would have lost something infinitely, irreplaceably precious and special. Now, they can be in any dimension, so they could be an emotion, a relationship, part of the natural world, a quality or an object. Do you think you're all comfortable to generate 3 of those each? I'll give you a moment to think about it. Do you want to start, Kath?
Yes. I'll go sister, sunshine and trees.
Lovely, thank you.
So I thought love, mother and ocean.
Lovely.
I thought friendship, smiling, and I think one of you stole my love one.
No, you can do love. Let's
You can never have too much love.
You can never have too much
Oh,
love.
I also thought acceptance.
Yeah, lovely, lovely. So I've done this, with about 30 different groups of generated values, groups varying in size, and I will now show you some of the things I've said. Okay, do you want to can we look at these, do you think? I can pass them around. In fact, I'm going to pass them around. We'll just each have a look at them. And you can have a look, have a look at, maybe each have a pile of a couple. And then
Oh, these are all different?
they're all different.
Ah,
yeah.
right.
Yeah. So just,
Okay.
now these vary, these were with groups, some teenage groups, mixed adult groups. Yeah, that's rare though.
That's
rare.
sort of out there randomly.
Yeah.
Somebody just loved their car.
I know, but that's rare.
Yeah.
That's rare. And there's a few university student groups, and I think you can see that basically there's a real commonality between all of these. If you want to have a little look at those.
Yeah, there's like the core relationships sort of
Yeah.
buster, isn't there? The mother, child, partner, family. My cat.
Yeah.
It just goes to show how much in common we have about
Yeah.
what real
So,
romance is.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
kind of basic purpose of just this part is just to illustrate that at a really core level, it goes back to what I was saying. the approach that I'm suggesting here isn't one of saying these people value this, these people value this, these people value this. It's of saying when you really ask people to sort of reach deep down inside them and ask them what it is that makes life really worth living, you get remarkably similar answers from people, all sorts of different people. So in a way, the essence of the infinite game, and we'll come back to the implications of that for learning in a second, are to keep these values in play and to keep together keeping these values in play. It's pretty simple, actually. So the opposite, finite games, object is to win, played with finite values. Now, finite games can sometimes be used to forward the infinite game, because if you think about competition, if you think about goals and structures and constraints and boundaries, they can be helpful, right? They can be helpful sometimes for forwarding these values, but we have to be really, really careful with them, because if they're outside the infinite game, if their purpose is to build egos and empires, then they detract from that game, that bigger, more important game. So 3 values, again, 3 finite values, and this is a definition. They're a value because of what they signify or enable. Okay, they're a means to an end, if you like, what they signify or enable. And they're a value because a group of people deem them so. So some other group of people may not find this particular thing useful or of value for whatever reason. And again, they can be an emotion, relationship, part of the natural world, a quality, or an object. Who wants to go first?
I thought money, power and religion.
Okay, great.
I had power, and I had success, and I had big houses.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I thought of money and success, and that's all I had.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You've been put on the spot. I mean, money is the number one thing. I can tell you nobody ever plays money into the infinite space, never. And people frequently play it into the finite space. So again, just a few to have a look at. You can have a look at a couple and pass them on. Again, to get this idea that basically there aren't as many of these as ever. Just to get the idea that basically these arrays look pretty similar to what you've generated. A lot of material objects, ranging from Barbie dolls, I think, is on there, to Lamborghinis. And again, a lot of words like power, status, control, yeah, and words like money and related words, gold, oil, I'm pretty sure it's on some of those, and so on.
Oil, diamonds and coal.
Oil, diamonds and coal, yeah. All the forms.
The whole carbon.
Yeah. So essentially, when, in this work that I've done, I would say, almost everybody that I've worked with understands that there are things we do for the sake of something else, these secondary values, and then these core values. And yet our society somehow has put so much emphasis on these finite values, on these things that are actually only of value because of what they signify or enable. And it's like they're these almost like sort of fantasy clouds that we create, pretending that that's where real life is, and we get really distracted by them, and I'll come back to that in a second. So the other thing, the final piece that I want to put in here is that this infinite finite dimension, which I've just been talking about, is mirrored in another branch of psychological research which talks about intrinsic and extrinsic values. And although they don't define them quite the same, they're really, really similar. So intrinsic values, they're intrinsically valuable, not because of what they lead to. Same kind of concept. Their extrinsic values they define as of value because of some external reward that they provide. So it's a slightly different definition. But interestingly, in the work they've done, they come down to the same things. Intrinsic values includes things like self-development, self-expression, but also, compassion, generosity, creativity, the natural world, all of those kinds of things. Extrinsic values, again, status, power, money, all of that kind of thing. And what's really interesting about the research they've done is that both these values are universal. They've done this stuff in lots of countries. Everybody has both sets. So, let's face it, we all value money to some extent. I mean, it would be sort of silly to say you didn't when you've just used it to buy a drink. You know what I mean? We do. They exist in all the countries studied. They exist in all the people studied. But what differs is the balance in different countries between the two sets, and the value balance in some individuals. So in other words, some individuals place more emphasis on the finite extrinsic dimension, some place more on the infinite intrinsic dimension. Now, the more emphasis either at both at a national level this has been done and at an individual level, the more emphasis that is placed on intrinsic values or infinite values, the more personal well-being, people are happier, the more empathic they are, the more pro-social they are, the more they do things for other people and have a sort of orientation towards other people. They're more concerned for the collective, they have an orientation towards that, and they're more environmental. So they have more concern and willingness to sort of put themselves out, if you like, for the natural world. Insecurity and threat, interestingly, triggers that whole extrinsic package. So when you threaten people, one of the things they do is that they stop caring for the collective, they start caring for themselves. It's like that inward focused reaction that fear and threat tends to promote in people. So what these researchers suggest, and this is where I want to promote this book, this can be downloaded for free from valuesandframes.org, but you can have a look at it here now. Is that it's really dangerous to market if you're wanting to essentially get people to play the infinite game, to use that language, and not that they're not playing it, but if you just want to make that more credible, more viable, more visible, then if you appeal to extrinsic and finite values, you might kind of win the particular thing you're trying to do, get people to put up solar panels or buy eco-store products or whatever. But what you're also doing is that you are increasing that whole perspective and way of looking at the world at the expense of the other. Because what these researchers find is you can't hold both simultaneously. They seem to have a sort of counterbalancing effect. If I'm acting infinitely, I can't be acting finitely at the same time. Which is a really interesting kind of phenomena of them. They've got a whole lot of other really, really useful practical sort of implications for that in here. That's kind of it in terms of the theoretical and the talk, blah, blah, blah.
Awesome. Thank you, Niki. That's amazing. It's so great to have you here and sharing that with us today. It's really superb.